He sold my birthday present, so I made him buy back his tech. This is a kind of old bit of revenge. Think when PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 was still new. And when I was learning the hard way, again, about dating total POSs. BF at the time, I would learn later, was a complete turd. Absolute POS. But I had no self-esteem, he paid me compliments, so I ended up dating him. Learn quickly girls, preferably in your early teens, compliments do not equal good guy. Anyway, he was a butt and I was grateful. For my birthday, my parents bought me an Xbox 360, or rather, they put £150, for birthday and Christmas, towards me getting said console. BF fronted the rest. It lived at his house, because he had a better TV. He had given me his old PSP, because he had also just bought a PS3, and it came with a lot of accessories and games. A few weeks pass and he sold the Xbox, reminder, partly my Xbox and a present from my folks, and bought himself a new iPhone. He had also asked for his PSP back, but his mum reminded him that it was a gift, so he backed off about it. A few weeks after that, yeah, I know, I didn't dump him the second he sold my console, but people with no self-esteem take an obscene amount of rubbish. I found out he was cheating on me. He worked in the Brit equivalent of GameStop at the time, so I sold his PSP, and all its bits, piece by piece, to the shop he worked in. Admittedly, I didn't get much for it, but I did get to enjoy his co-workers grinning as they bought it all. He had annoyed a few people off there too. I also got to enjoy knowing that it would have cost him more than £150 to get all the bits back. Yes, it may have been petty, but it was satisfying. Petty penny. Years ago I worked in a civil court. I can't remember the details of this particular case other than it was a neighbor dispute. The plaintiff was awarded judgment and the defendant had come to the courthouse to pay the debt. As soon as I saw him I chuckled and thought, WTF, because he came in with wheelbarrow hauling a huge burlap sack which I soon found out was full of pennies. He was quite clearly upset about the judgment and insisted the only way he would reimburse the plaintiff was in the form of pennies, unrolled and free-flowing. I laughed softly, thinking to myself, not a bad idea actually. I don't recall the amount of the judgment but I think it was something like $1,500 or $500, I don't know. However many it takes to fill a big burlap sack. I explained to him that not only would the court not be willing to accept a ton of pennies, it would be US rolling them all, not the plaintiff, and that he should speak with the plaintiff directly and offer his settlement. I thought that was the end of it, but about 30 minutes later I picked up an incoming call from a very irate plaintiff who was practically screaming, "Do I have to take all these beeping pennies?" I re-advised him that the courts did not guarantee payment of judgments, so he could certainly refuse, but he may otherwise never get paid. I can't remember what his reply was, but he ended up taking the pennies and boy, he was not happy. I've always wanted to repay something like this in pennies, nickels now I guess, but, luckily, so far I've never had a chance.
Fun fact, anything over $5 in 5-cent coins aren't considered legal tender, at least in Australia. So I wouldn't waste my time if I were you.
Be a jerk, fine. I'll take your party. Backstory. I live in an urbanized area. Most people's only option is street parking as most residences do not have private driveways. A guy recently, last 6 months, moved into the apartment building across the street and is running his construction business out of it. He owns 4 large trucks, 3 with out-of-state plates and 1 in-state commercial plate. Because he's so inconsiderate he double parks his trucks so he can get in and out of spots easily and takes up about 7 spots total, completely fucking everyone else over that lives in the neighborhood. Last week I asked him to be considerate of the rest of the neighborhood since he's always parking like a colon exit. I understand you catch more flies with honey than vinegar, but F him at this point. He shrugged me off and left his cars double parked. That night he was throwing a get-together where he and about 10 others were all drinking in lawn chairs in the sidewalk, blasting music out of one of the vehicles. Cue petty revenge. Multiple calls to police about public intoxication and excessive noise levels led to multiple tickets being issued. Soon calls to get commercial plates ticketed and towed for overnight parking is next on the list. Lesson: don't be an inconsiderate butt and be kind to your neighbors. Pettiness at its best. This is not my story but my aunt's. It was a long time ago, some details might not be clear. Once my aunt planned a trip with her friends to Hawaii. The friends in question A, B, C as we will call them. I was in charge of the plane tickets, my aunt of the hotel booking, C and B would pay the travel and sightseeing expenses, each paid for their own food. These were divided between them when they planned the trip, so that they would not have to worry too much. So on the day of the flight, my aunt meets them in the airport, they talk etc. When it's time to board the flight, A says to my aunt that she and B, C have gotten upgraded to first class. My aunt thinks okay, no problem, maybe it was their credit card or something that they got upgraded, but she felt all three could not have gotten it together. Then when they landed, C and my aunt go to the toilets, where C let it slip that A had gotten him first class tickets but not for my aunt. My aunt was angry but she kept calm. My aunt had informed them beforehand she had a beach house there, but it's going through renovation, so maybe some other day they could go. So now everyone has to book a hotel. While A, B, C book the hotel for 10 days, duration of trip, my aunt selects the cheapest room for 3 days. They all go to their respective rooms. When it's time to go have food, my aunt orders the most expensive things and miraculously she has forgotten her wallet. This went on for 2 more days, until my aunt left for her beach house. The next morning, the friends came to a realization my aunt had already left the hotel and went to enjoy the vacation on her own. Husband who dumped me now pays me not to file for divorce. My husband of 25 years decided he wanted to split up. I unsuccessfully begged him to change his mind, and spent a lot of nights crying on the bathroom floor. One thing to note is that I carried the health insurance for the family. He is self-employed. When he wouldn't change his mind, we filed for legal separation and he moved out. In the meantime, I got a bangin' new job that covers 100% of the health and dental insurance premiums for the entire family, with a $100 deductible. Sweet. He is still allowed to be on my insurance, since we are legally separated rather than divorced, and it costs me nothing to have him on my insurance. But I am petty as hell. So I charge him $400 a month for something that costs me $0. He of course is welcome to get insurance on his own in the marketplace, which would probably cost at least 2x that amount for an equivalent policy. I make sure he knows it costs me nothing, nada, zip to have him on my insurance, and that his $400 per month payment is funding my upcoming trip to Spain. If you have a legal separation, getting a divorce in my state is just a matter of filing a form and paying $60. If I did that, he couldn't be on my insurance anymore. So he is basically paying me $400 a month not to file for divorce, after not wanting to be married anymore. I love it. Halloween horror story or hilarious? Back in 1987, when I was 7, my 13-year-old big brother took me trick-or-treating with him and his girlfriend. We were later joined by his friends, twin brothers who I'll leave nameless. They'd learned where their junior high principal lived years before, and had a tradition of kicking in the faces of her meticulously carved pumpkins and slashing her tires. They made sure to wear masks in case she heard the ruckus, and basically thought they were committing the perfect crime. Apparently she'd had enough, and decided to get her revenge. She purchased 2 brass, I'm guessing the material, pumpkins, painted them to look realistic, and when one of the idiots tried kicking one halfway across Arizona, the only sound made was a crunch, followed by a blood-curdling scream. Several toes and bones were fractured. Even though I know I saw her curtain move, she never once came out of the house. The following Monday, the principal stood outside her office as students entered the building. When the broken brother, nicknamed Brothers GF, gave him, yes, it stuck. Most call him BB to this day, crutched his way past her with a huge cast on his lower leg, she of course asks, oh sweetie, what happened to you? She also made sure to give him her brightest smile every morning afterwards till summer vacation started. Turned out she committed the perfect crime. They couldn't even tell their parents what she'd done without admitting what they'd been doing. And the icing on the cake is that she painted, laughy faces, her term, on those pumpkins the next year and has every Halloween since. Do you have a secret little subreddit that is a favorite? Share it in the comments and it could become the next big thing.